There you go, so it doesn't cut you off. There.
Okay, great, thanks. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. I'm Ed Haddon, one of the directors on the BC Grain Producers Association. Couple of housekeeping things that probably everybody's pretty much aware of, but of course keep yourself on mute until you're ready to speak. And unstable internet, of course, keep your video off. And we're good. Of course, we're recording this already, so you know that. And at the end of this, we'll be sending out a survey, and we sure hope you fill it out and give us some feedback that we'd really appreciate. So I think that would be it. So we'll do some introductions here. Leah Shields and Carla Hartling are presenting today. Leah is a Senior Water Authorizations Specialist with Regional Operations Division, Northeast area of the Ministry of Forest, Lands, Natural Resources and Rural Development. Leah Shields graduated from the University of Guelph with a degree in environmental science. She started her career in the Northeast in 2014 doing forestry consulting and data analysis. In 2016, she made the move to government, initially doing similar forestry work and then transitioned to the water authorization team, where she has moved up the ranks and is currently the team supervisor. In her spare time, she enjoys playing clarinet in the community bands, spending time with family, and snuggling her two good cats. Carla is the Water Resource Specialist with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries. She is based out of Kamloops and has a wealth of knowledge and experience in water licensing for agricultural producers. Prior to joining the Ministry of Ag, Food and Fisheries, she worked with in water allocations with the Forestry, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development for 6 years. So with that, ladies, I'll give you the floor.
All right, thank you. Carla, if it works for you, I'm ready to go first.
Sure, that sounds good.
All right. All right, you guys see my main presentation or my speaker view?
Speaker view.
All right, it always says that. Give them a swap. There we go. How's that?
Yep, that works. Perfect.
As Ed had mentioned, I'm Leah Shields. I'm with the very long ministry name of Flimro, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about water licensing and in particular the upcoming existing use groundwater deadline. Going to start with a little bit of history on water resource management in BC and then kind of go into the existing use groundwater specifics and give you guys some tips and tricks on how to apply. So water legislation in BC started in 1858. This was pretty simple, pretty bare bones, as you could imagine from 1958 in the Goldfields Act. That grew to the Water Act in 1909, and within the Water Act, all surface water usage was legislated and managed by government. In 2016, our new Water Sustainability Act was introduced to replace the Water Act, and with it came the licensing and management of both surface water and groundwater, and that, of course, is our biggest change and one of the reasons why we're here today to discuss the groundwater licensing. So why was groundwater added? Actually, BC is a little behind the times on groundwater licensing. So this isn't a new concept in Canada. You can see here, a lot of the other provinces have had groundwater licensing for quite some time. So BC, with our new legislation, thought that groundwater licensing is a great way to help government better manage our water resources and know what's going on our land base. So under the water licensing regime, there's kind of two streams, two different types of water that are licensable. The first is stream water, so any water coming out of that large list there. Basically, if it's naturally occurring and you can stand there and see it with your eyes, it's a surface water source. And groundwater is, of course, anything occurring below the surface in an aquifer or in the soils. An important note here is that rainwater, overland flow, and snowmelt are not vested. Of course, if you guys wanted to put up a water barrel in your backyard, water your gardens, that's not something that government manages. If it comes from the sky and you catch it, it's all yours. That does get a little bit tricky, particularly in the Northeast where there are a lot of dugouts. And that's something that my team is heavily involved in and can help applicants with, is determining if you have a dugout, what percent of that dugout is being filled by groundwater, therefore licensable, and what part is maybe just overland flow and not licensable. So you've decided you're using either surface water or groundwater, and you need to apply for a license. We'll go through step one in some more details, but basically, first thing is submit your application through Front Counter BC. From there is an initial review. Do you meet the bare minimum requirements? We'll go through what those are. Then it gets passed on to my team. We do a bit more of a technical review from a hydrology and environmental standpoint. Depending on the file, it goes to First Nations consultation. Notification and referrals, if there's potential to impact your neighbors, they get the heads up, any other land owners in the system. We write our technical reports, make a recommendation to the decision maker, who kind of considers everything, all the different facets, economic, social, environmental, and makes a final decision on whether to grant or deny a license. So into our existing use, as I go forward talking about this, it's important to keep in mind the dates up on the screen. So if you, for your business usage, was using groundwater prior to February 29th, 2016, you're what we call an existing use groundwater user. So that was the date when the Water Sustainability Act was enacted. Prior to that, groundwater users in BC could continue to legally use all the water that they have historically. So if you started using water after that date, then it's what's called a new use. Legislation was already in place, and there was a requirement for groundwater licensing before you started using water. And of course, this is the big ticket item. The deadline to submit existing use applications is March 1st. That is creeping up very soon on us. If you do miss that deadline and you qualify as an existing user, unfortunately, that's it. The application type is gone, the transition period over, and you have to apply as a new user with the disclaimer that any new use applications, you can't use the water until a license is approved. That differs from the existing use groundwater. As long as you get your application in by that deadline, you can keep using water until you hear a decision from government. So definitely good incentive to get those applications in before March 1st if you need them. So some highlights on the differences and some of the perks of existing use groundwater. If you apply before the deadline, you get to maintain your priority date. What that means is that if you or someone on your property has been using water for, say, irrigation since 1950, then you get that date of 1950. And in times of water shortage or scarcity, you, or maybe the most senior user on the system, and if restrictions are required, we do them kind of chronologically backwards. So newer users may be asked to restrict water usage first. So good idea if you've been using water for a long time to secure that date of first use. Up until the deadline, application fees are waived. Like I said, you can keep using groundwater until a decision is made, but there are rentals payable back until 2016. That, of course, being required because licensing has been required since then. And we wouldn't want you just paying from the application date, or everyone's going to apply on February 28th and really stress my team out with hundreds of applications at once. So if all of that sounds like something that you need for your business, or here's a little bit on how to apply. So the website is through Front Counter BC through their Natural Resource Online Services portal. Right now, there's a little banner along the top there that rotates through promoting existing use. So you can click on that or click on the little drop-down menu there. That will bring you up these options. You want an existing use groundwater application. Alternatively, we discussed if you're a surface water user or a new groundwater user, water license new would be your option. And from there, it'll bring you into the application, walks you through the 10 steps, various information that's required until your application is completed. So some of the information that will be required in those 10 steps starts with pretty basic stuff. We're going to need your name and contact info, location of any of the works. Maybe you have pipe and troughs. Maybe you have an irrigation system, what you're using the water for, where you're using the water, a map of all of this, and proof of ownership to occupy the land, and consent of co-applicants. So if two people on the property, maybe you and your partner are on title, then co-applicants, we require consent from both landowners. And particular importance to existing use is this history and supporting evidence of date of first use. So that information to government saying, hey, I've used this water since 1950 and here's why. So I'm going to go into details on a few of these a little bit more. First and foremost, and you may recall from the previous slide on the application there, we really recommend setting up a BCEID account. This is free. I've been told it's hopefully quick and painless. And something worth noting here is you need the basic BCID. There's a couple different options for types of accounts. The other ones require more information and you to sign things and give paperwork. And for existing use, for any groundwater licensing, you don't need that. You want the basic BCEID. The benefits of having this account is you can come back in, you can make edits to your application. You know, if you got those Peace Region winds and blows your power out, then you can come back and pick up on your application where you left off. So one of the things you need is your water use purpose. This is outlined more in the application forms, but basically there's a whole bunch of different reasons you may be using water. Of note, groundwater domestic use, so that's use in your household, you know, your kitchen, your laundry, your garden, your pets, that type of thing is not licensable for groundwater, is for surface water. That's an important distinction. Don't need to be applying for a groundwater license just for your household use. Do need it for all of these more industrial commercial uses. Of note to the people here today, probably industrial, livestock and animal, or irrigation. Storage is important to note as well. If your water source is from a dugout and you are storing water in that dugout, of course, then a storage purpose would apply as well. So we said we need some information about you, the owners, and proof that you have rights to this land. The easiest way to find this is through your BC assessment or your property land title. So make sure that your name on your application is matching the name on your documentation. As I mentioned, co-applicants are needed. If there's multiple names on there, we'll need a consent form. It's a very simple, like, hey, you know, one person in my household is taking charge of this application. I acknowledge they're applying, give them my support, and to go forward with this application. And if you're using an agent, if you just don't want to deal with any of this process, there are lots of companies out there that you can hire to help you with the application process. And all you'll need from them is a letter of agency. Again, can be like a simple, you know, one paragraph saying, I give company ABC permission to act on my behalf in regards to this application. A site map is needed. These can be pretty basic. We will take them on the back of a napkin, but prefer them to be electronic, more detailed. That's something that government staff can help you with. We have lots of mapping technology available to us. So on your maps, we basically need your property boundary and any works, you know, your dugouts, your pipes, your wells, where the water is being used. Maybe your well's over here, you're piping it over here to your barn, and just general overview of what's going on your property related to water. So that data of first use. This can come in many forms. Basically, we're just looking for a history of water use on the property. This could be for you specifically, or if you bought a farm and it was being farmed before that, that still counts. That's the historic use from when the use started, say irrigation. The irrigation started in the 50s with your great-great-grandfather, then your date of first use is the 50s. It can come from specifics. Maybe you have business documents when you were incorporated, you've got insurance documents for farm status, well drilling records, anything like that. If you don't have those, that is a-okay. We will take just a signed declaration saying, me as the landowner, to the best of my knowledge, water has been used for this purpose since ABCD date. So there's a bunch of different options to get us that date of first use information. Here's a little bit more details. Well records are great. All registered well drillers in BC can submit these well records, and it gets uploaded to a government database. So if they drilled a well, we will have the record of it, and that can be a great indication of date of first use. And a note that not all wells can be found in this database. It's called our GWells database, especially older wells prior to our electronic system, different licensing and registration structures for well drillers in BC. But if you can't find your record, that's a-okay. Then you can just do that signed declaration saying, you know, I believe the well was drilled around whatever time. A description of the works is also needed. So the works is the equipment that's being used to move the water around. Some common ones there: pumps, pipes, troughs, dugouts, irrigation systems. You can see a little snippet on the right there is from the application form. It gives you a little pick list, what you choose for your works. And to note with the works, I find in the Northeast this comes up a lot. It's really important to distinguish between dams versus dugouts. So the dam being a barrier that can store water behind it. So if you dug out your dugout, you took all the soil you dug out and you piled it up around, so there's a little berm, that is a dam. Good news, minor dams are less than 7.5 meters in height, 10,000 cubes, and a low risk rating. That is the vast majority of dams, both in the piece and specifically within the agricultural community. So if you are a minor dam, yeah, just, you know, that small little dugout, you built berms with your leftover sediment. There are no specific licensing requirements. You're exempt from the dam safety regulation. It's more or less a box we tick on our end saying, yeah, there's a dam there, but it's small, it's minor. If you do have a dam that meets those criteria and it is larger, then that brings you under the dam safety regulation, and there are some requirements and reporting on that just to make sure that a structure that large is operating in a safe manner. All right, that's my spiel. I had been given a couple questions beforehand that the association had, so I'll go through those first. Why do we need licensing? I believe I touched on that a bit during the presentation, but most importantly, it's to secure your water rights. The government needs to know what's going on in our watersheds, in our aquifers. If oil and gas shows up next door, wants to drill a well and be taking out really large volumes of water. If you're licensed, then government knows you're there. We're taking that into consideration, and large volumes being withdrawn somewhere else in the aquifer won't be impacting the water level of your well. Legislative compliance, of course, if you miss the March 1st deadline and continue using water, you are in non-compliance. And in general, it just really aids government in managing our water resources. We need your guys' help knowing what's going on the land base. Land transfer. Does the water license stick with the previous owner? So this one's a really good one and comes up quite a bit. And the answer is no, the licenses stick with the land. So if, say, you're going to buy a new farm property and the current owner holds a water license, you can buy that property and use water as they were licensed to do so. An important little administrative detail is that the previous owners will need to submit an amendment application for a name change, address change, or license transfer. And this is just to update you, the new owner, as the new contact information, and of course, transfer over billing. No one wants to get billed for a water license on a property they don't live on anymore. What calculations are used to determine how much water is allowed to be licensed from a source? So this depends if it's a groundwater or a surface water source. For surface water sources, we have the environmental flow needs policy. That's a publicly available policy. You guys could give a Google if you're curious. But generally within that policy, we can allocate up to 10% of flows in a stream. Depending on the stream, that can go down to 5% or up to 20%. And it's worth noting that that's flows at that exact moment, not over the year. So if you're looking for water from a surface water source, it's raging, it's flowing all spring during freshet, and then kind of starts to dry up into the late summer, fall. And you may be able to use water under that 10% threshold in the spring, but as the season dries out, then there could be some concerns on that end. And for groundwater sources, it's a bit of a it depends situation. There's lots of mapped aquifers in the province that government has lots of information on. We can access well records for other wells within an aquifer to get an idea of usage, depth of to water, that type of thing. But honestly, I can't give you guys a clear answer on that one. It's a lot of consultation internally with our specialists, hydrogeologists, our groundwater specialists that kind of look at each aquifer one at a time. Clarification on the process of applying. Hope that we covered that. So apply online through that natural resource online services. Or if you have any questions or need some help applying, you can contact Front Counter BC at 1-877-855-3222. And our last question is my favorite. Can anyone license a dugout on private property if it doesn't carry a current license? So short answer, very unlikely. I've got a couple of slides to support this one. So the Water Sustainability Act has this section under expropriation. So basically, they have the right to expropriate land if it's reasonably required. And this quite often comes up, say your neighbor has a stream running through their property, this water doesn't run through your property, you want to run a pipe, across their land into the river and be able to pipe it over to your land for use. So that's kind of where it comes up, really big scale, stuff like Site C and flooding of land as well. So if your neighbor wants to put a pipe across your property, you guys are free to be cool about it. They can buy you a beer and you can sign just an agreement between the two of you to have that pipe be there. If your neighbor's a little less cooperative, then this expropriation route is an option. And it's important to note that the person whose land is being intruded on must be paid compensation. So no one can come in and start building pipelines, dams, dugouts on your land, without your permission in your casual buy a dinner agreement, or without providing compensation and going through this long legal expropriation process. So that's just for the land side of things. The access to water, there's a lot of words up on the screen, but I didn't want to improperly paraphrase it for you guys. But worth noting is that if someone wants access to your water, they need to be able to prove that no other water supply is reasonably available, that they can't drill their own well, they can't, try and pipe from the stream down the road on the other side of their property. They can't build a dugout, that there's no way that they can access water other than your water. So contrary to what the question asked, this only applies if your water is licensed and someone else is looking to access that. So if you don't hold the water license, people can't just show up and start taking your water. As we said in the application process, in order to get a water license, you need proof of ownership of that land. And of course, yeah, Joe Blow says they want to access your dugout. They're not going to have that proof of ownership because they're not the owners of the land. You are. Again, worth noting that if it ever comes down to this, compensation is required. Provincially, this I think has only happened once. There's a case down south where a municipality needed water for their community, and BC Hydro had a reservoir with some water. So it really does come down to that emergency situation that, hey, we need some water right now. There's nothing else that we can do. Can we use some water that you are currently licensed for our use? If you have it, if BC Hydro said, nope, we need all this water in this reservoir, there's none available, then this power to authorize the extension of rights wouldn't be an option. So yeah, short story, no one can show up on your property and take your water or access your dugouts, your wells without your consent. All right, I don't know, Kristen, if we want to take questions now or hold it until the end when Carla is done.
If there's any questions now, might as well.
Perfect. Any questions?
Yes, I have one. I guess currently to date, I'm just looking at, I have fall under the domestic use on my particular dugout. So I guess I would have the option of either applying or not. Has there been much uptake? How many have been applied for in the area? I'm just thinking locally, I can count 35 dugouts, and I know my neighbors fairly well, and I'm not sure how much willingness there'd be on their part to go through this procedure.
Yeah, so for the non-domestic, the licensable usage, our last check was at the end of the calendar year there, but we'd had 188 people apply in the Northeast. All right, well, maybe I'll let you guys think on that. My presentation can sink in, and I'll hand it over to Carla.
All right, I'm going to do a demonstration of the BC Agriculture Water Tool. And it's a tool I would really recommend if you are going to apply for a agricultural type water license, existing use groundwater license. Using this tool prior to applying will help you get a lot of that information that's required for the license all in one report in one spot. So a lot of people have been finding it really helpful to use this tool to generate a report that gives them a map and information on their use quantities and that type of thing. And then you have that ready to go once you go to the application page. So I'm just going to try share my screen here. Righty. So everybody can see this map here. We're all good? Okay.
And
we need a second screen, I think. Yeah.
Screen. Yeah.
Oh, you can't see it?
No, we can see a chat box.
Oh, maybe because I moved it. Where'd it go? I just switched it to my laptop screen instead of now.
Yep, now
All
we can
good?
see it.
Okay. So I think we will be providing a handout or an email that has links to the BC Agriculture Water Calculator and to the existing use groundwater license application page and a few other links that might help, and also a handout that walks you through the steps that I'm going to show you here, and then also walks you through the steps for the actual application page. So we'll try connect with the organizers, I guess, and get that email sent out to everybody afterwards so that everyone has those links available and the actual guidance document walking you through it available too. So the BC Ag Water Calculator, you can search for your property either by zooming in or by putting your PID number up in the top corner. We recommend the PID number instead of your address because addresses can be written different ways and harder to search for. So I'd either go by the PID number or just zoom in. I'm going to just zoom into one of my coworkers' farms up near Hazelton. And once I get close, oops, I'm just using my mouse to zoom in. You can also use these plus and minus buttons over here to zoom in and out. And the little layers up in the top right corner, you can change to satellite, so you can actually see the satellite imagery. Oh. All right, just zoom into his property here. So this is their farm right here. And you can see this bluish purple dot is a well. And if you see a green dot, that means that's a surface water license. And if you click on it, you can see the information for that surface water license. In this case, we're going to click on this well. And it will tell you, if your well has been registered, it will show up here as a dot. If it hasn't been registered, then that's okay, because I'll show you how to add your well information here so you can use it in your application. In this case, it has been registered. And it gives you the tag number, the depth drilled, and the coordinates. And if I click on this well report button, then it will open up that GWells database that Leah was talking about and go to your well record within that database. And it just tells you kind of information on the well. It gives you the latitude and longitude coordinates and any information on the drilling and the date it was constructed. And then a lot of the records will actually have the original well driller's record as saved as a PDF. Not all of them will have this, but some of them will. So if you click on that, it will open up another window where you can actually see the well record here. So these documents are handy to have when you get into that application. So you can click the download button. I'm in Chrome, so it's just this download arrow and download your drilling record. You might want to make a folder saved to your computer called water licensing or something like that, and save all of your records to that one thing. So once you're in the application, you can just upload them from that one folder. Otherwise, it would automatically probably save to your downloads folder. So you would save that. If you don't have the driller's log, you can also just save a copy of this page by going to this print button and saying save as PDF, and then save, and that will save it as a PDF to whatever folder you choose. So that's just a quick and easy way to get information on your well if it's been registered. And if you go back to the BC water calculator, then, and we click on this property, it automatically takes you to this irrigation tab here, and it gives you the area for the entire property. The default crop is forage. It has a soil that's based on a provincial database, default irrigation sprinkler, and then it gives you the quantity you would need if you're irrigating the entire field, or the entire property, sorry. And we're not going to be doing that. So I'm going to go to this Make a Diagram tab in the top right corner. And I'm going to start off, if your well doesn't show up here, you can take a well point and put it on your map, or if it's in the wrong place, you could put it where it actually is. One little tip is, even if your well does show up, if you put your well point over top of it, ideally so your coordinates would match your well record, but then this description will show up in the actual report that gets printed off. It's not a big deal if it doesn't show up in that report. It's just kind of handy to see it there with the coordinates. So I would call it, in this case, well tag number 39916. If you don't have, if it wasn't registered, it won't have a well tag number. You can just call it house well or barn well or something like that. And I believe it was 295 feet. So the finished well depth was 295. So I'm going to put that here. If your pump was set at a different depth, you might put that pump depth there and hit close. And if you click on it again, that information will pop up again. And then next, I'm going to add an irrigated area. So to start with, we'll just say we're irrigating this one field here. So I'll click on each corner and then double click to finish drawing it. And then it zooms into the field. I'm going to call it forage. We'll do this one just as a forage field. and hit close. And then if I click on it again, it does show you the area in cubic meters. You can change that to acres. So it's about 24 acres, or hectares, which is what the application asks for. So it's about 9.8 hectares. And then we can draw the pipeline going from the well to your field. And you just need to draw the main line. You don't need to draw every single movable sprinkler line. And we'll just say main line. And then if you have maybe a trough, you could add that and draw a line to your trough. Let's say water. Height 2, you don't have to call it anything if you don't want to. And then if you have a dugout, you can add the location of that dugout to your field as well. And then you could call it northeast dugout. And you can put the rough surface area. So you can change it to feet if you prefer feet, square feet. So let's say 100 square feet and a depth of 5 feet. And if you click on that again, you can see it. And this will all show up in your map now because we've put it on here. So since we did that one field, we can go back to the Irrigation tab and we can go up to here where it says acres. I would change it to hectares and then put in that 9.8 hectares. And I'll leave this as forage, but you could change it to cereal, corn, pasture, anything else you might have. And that will adjust the quantity slightly. I'm just going to leave it as forage for this. And I'm going to leave the soil. I would only change the soil if you know for a fact that the soil of your field is different than what shows up here. And you can change the sprinkler type. So if it was a wheel line instead, you could change that too. Often licenses will be April 1st to September 30th, but this part calculates the actual growing season for your area. So if you were down in the Okanagan, it might be more like 140 days, but up here it's 120. And down here, so this is where it gives you your water demand for that one field. And then if you wanted to add a second field, it does give you the ability to do that. So you could add here field number 2. You could go back, make a diagram and draw over this second field. Pick a different crop if it's different crop and get that second quantity, and it would give you your first field plus your second field and the total quantity here. I'm just going to close this and we'll just deal with one field for now. And then once you're done with your irrigation part, you can click on this Livestock tab and you can pick your type of animal. So we'll say beef. And in this case, we'll say we have 100 head of beef. And you can say whether you need the water all year round or if you only need it seasonally because they're on range for part of the year maybe, then you could adjust that. We'll say we need it all year round here. And then it gives you this quantity in liters that you can change to cubic meters. So for 100 beef for 365 days of the year, I would need 1830 cubic meters. And then if you have another type of animal, you can add them. So if I have some horses, then I could add 20 horses, assuming I use the horses for a purpose to make money off of. If you just have a few pet horses, then you don't need to put a livestock watering quantity. And so then it gives you the annual water demand for 20 horses there. And then the combined demand for all livestock is at the bottom. So once you have finished this, you can go to the Save Report. And once you get to this stage, you want to make sure that your property is highlighted in blue like this one is, because if it's not highlighted in blue, then the map won't show up when you save the report. And if you're only doing livestock or only irrigation, then you could uncheck. Because I put information in for both irrigation and livestock water are checked off. But if I only had done irrigation, then you could uncheck this or vice versa. So now I'm going to hit Generate Report PDF. And it just might take a minute here. And because I'm in Chrome, it showed up down here. And I think it automatically downloaded to my downloads folder. And if I click on this to open it, then we can see the report that's generated. So it gives you the PID number, the total area, and then my field 1 irrigation quantity, the quantity I need for the livestock and animals, or livestock and horses, sorry, beef and horses. Then if I scroll to the next page, it gave me, oh, I guess I was zoomed in so it only cut it off. So if you're going to generate the port, it might be good to zoom out so you get your whole property in there. In this case, I have my works there, so that's probably good enough. And then if you scroll down, it shows the well tag number and depth, the irrigated area, the pipeline, the trough, and the dugout, and the information on the size of the dugout. So this is a lot of the information you'll actually need for that existing use groundwater license application all in one spot that you'll have downloaded to your computer. And then you can upload this to your application as the map that they want. And when they ask how you calculated your demand, you can say you used the agriculture water calculator. So that's kind of a brief overview about how to use that. Does anybody have any questions on that? Nope. We do have, I think in the link thing I'll send out, we have a video recording of my coworker going through this whole process and then also through the entire application process. So if that would help anybody, they can actually watch that recording of her going through everything. And then with that handout, hopefully you can be able to go through that yourself, following along with the handout and the recording.
Hey, Carla, could you look up property ID for me real quick in the
Sure.
water calculator? 013.
Yep.
397 346.
So you just hit enter and it should zoom right to it.
And so that is one title that's split by the Alaska Highway Road Allowance.
Mm-hmm.
How do I highlight both of them at the same time?
I think it might depend on what kind of, on my computer, if I hold down control, oops, it was working. Well, now it's not working.
No, it's
Before
like
on one, I was
usually-
holding down, yeah.
Yeah, for multiple
Okay.
properties you can control, but it seems like there might
Oh,
be.
that is weird. I guess in that case, you could just highlight one and then write in the comments if the water is actually used on both, because it doesn't look like it does actually let you select both. Like I can select the one beside it, but not on the other side of the highway. So that seems like I'll let the Ministry of Ag people know that there's a glitch in the system there.
Okay, sounds good. Just wanted to
so-
make sure I'm not messing that up here.
No,
because
I think that looks like a glitch. Like it should either highlight both together or you should be able to select both. And I know another thing somebody brought up was if you're on a PC, you can click on one property and hold control down and click on another to select both, but on a Mac, it doesn't seem to work. So that's just another little glitch there. But in that case, I would highlight one of the properties. The water officer looking at it will realize that it's a whole property. You could still draw your field over here. And then if you're zoomed out, both, like if you drew your field here, and zoomed out, even though this one was highlighted, it would show both fields. So they could still see that you're irrigating on both sides. Will that hopefully work, or do you think?
Yeah, it's a workaround for one. I had they
Yeah.
were working on some stuff that had 10,000 acres, and
Oh, wow.
about half of the parcels were
Oh,
had
okay.
some kind of road allowance on them. So, but yeah, like you said, and like the acreage is reported, and that report are not as important as the ones on the actual application, and the discrepancy. is just
Yeah, and I
coming from
think, so I think if you clicked on this, it should, I'm not sure if it would, so it gives you 41 hectares. I'm just going to see if that's the area for the half or the full property. So yeah, it is only giving you the area for that part two, not for the entire property. So then if you were saying you're irrigating more than that, it does let you put in more, but it'll flag it that, like if I put in 85 or something, it says the irrigated area is larger than the total, but it still does do the calculations down here. So I guess there is a bit of a workaround, but it's, yeah, that does seem like an error. Any other questions about the agriculture water calculator or application process in general, I guess?
I'm not sure if this one is for you or for Leah, but if a producer has, or a rancher has a bunch of dugouts that are pre-2016, and they build a couple new ones in between, and a couple of them have some surface water influence, do they submit 3 separate applications?
So would those be in between 2016 and now? Like some would have been built after 2016?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll let Leah answer that since she's, I did work in allocations, but I'll let her take that one since she's in your area.
It would probably be 2 applications. So yeah, the existing use to be able to keep their priority date and keep using water until a decision is made. And then for the new stuff, whether it's surface water or groundwater, that can be combined on one application.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
And you can use this tool for your new applications too. It's good for any kind of application.
In the Northeast right now, what's an approximate timeline from submission to license?
That's a good one. Our target turnaround time is 140 days for 80% of our files. If you or anyone at Blackbird Matthias had submitted existing use applications a couple years ago, it probably took you 3, 4, 5 years to hear from us. We did staff up last year and got through our backlog. So of that 188 applications I mentioned, I think 185 of them have been started. So of course, we're anticipating getting a whole new influx before the deadline, but we're looking, the year, 2-year range, not the 5-year range like we had been before. And that's why it's very good that users can keep using water until we get a decision. We acknowledge that, government's not always the fastest, and we don't want to be impeding people's businesses while we're doing work on our end.
Was there anything else there? Maybe you're thinking hard about something else.
As you were mentioning, there's about 188 applications in the system. If we triple that before the end of the month, we have 600 landowners with industrial land use that have submitted an application. That's still a fairly small proportion of landowners in the Northeast. What's the plan for the remainder?
So as I said before, if you are an existing user and you don't apply by this deadline, you are in non-compliance. Of course, we're going to be a bit realistic about it. We do have a large land base out there to try and cover, but there's been lots of talks both locally with our locally and provincially with our compliance team on how we are going to tackle this. So there will be people out there looking. My team is well aware, the compliance team is well aware. So tell your friends, please apply before the deadline. But yeah, it is a big land base out there.
And I'm not sure up north, but I know here just in the past couple weeks, the Front Counter BC sent out 180,000 flyers around the province, and there's been a bit of a mad application rush. So the number might be a fair bit higher than that, 180 some now, just in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've definitely been getting a lot of calls and helping out with the provincial call center as well as our local one through Front Counter. And yeah, I myself actually got a groundwater mail out letter despite being on municipal water. So I think they cast the net pretty wide on who they're getting sent to. We really wanted to make sure we're reaching as many people as we can before the deadline.
And yeah, I guess if you do get stuck on any of this, or one of my other recommendations would be if you're personally not great with computers, although maybe because you were able to get on this call, you are. Some people, I know I've dealt with some people who are not familiar with computers at all. And if you can find a friend or family member who is, then that would probably really help the application process, because if you're struggling to save files or upload files and that kind of thing, it can be really painful and really frustrating for people. So if you can't find a friend or family member, I think you can call Front Counter BC and they can try walk you through it. But yeah, if you can find somebody who has some of that basic computer knowledge to help, then that's really a good help to have on hand.
I'm not sure what the COVID-related rules are right now in Fort St. John here, but Front Counter in town here is very, very helpful with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think if you can call, I know in Kamloops, I think you can call and make an in-person appointment as well, like for a one-on-one. But they are getting pretty busy. So if you're wanting to do that, I would try to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, definitely. COVID, I believe our Front Counter now has reduced hours. It's kind of 10 to 2 instead of their normal 8 to 4, and they aren't taking drop-in clients. If you do want to meet with them in person, it's appointment only, and kind of need to prove that you can't do it over the phone. You know, we can send out Zoom links. We can work with people electronically as well. So that's our first choice option, to be COVID conscious, but can take people in person with appointments as needed.
So yeah, I guess that's maybe it. Oh, sorry.
I've got a question. So as a grain farmer, I basically just use domestic use. I have quite a few dugouts on the farm that would be surface water. Do I have to register those dugouts?
And are you sure that you're not using water from those surface water dugouts to irrigate with?
No, we don't irrigate.
Then surface water is licensable for domestic use. So yeah, we would encourage you to apply for what would be called a new surface water license for those on-stream dugouts. Right, if they were off-stream, then not licensable.
Okay. So off-stream is not licensable.
Yeah, the dugout in the middle of your field, if that's your domestic water source, don't need a license. If that dugout is on stream, it's then a surface water source and is licensable.
Okay.
Sounds like either way, the deadline probably wouldn't apply for you though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair.
Okay, thanks. Thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Yeah, I guess, well, should we send the email with all those links to, who would be best to send that to, I guess?
If
you
email them to me, I'll share them with the membership and everything.
Okay. All right, that sounds good.
Yeah, and of course, it's now, we'll put this up on YouTube so everybody can have a look at it again when they have more time or whatever too. So hopefully that'll get to a few more people as well.
Yeah, I think Front Counter BC has a brief video too, and there's another YouTube video of Ted Vandergulik, who is an agrologist, going through it. I think the link we send out, my coworker Tara goes through it, is a little cleaner and faster, so that might be a good one, but it's also an hour. I think the Front Counter one might be a bit shorter.
Great. Okay, well, I guess if there's no other questions, then we'll close this off.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Good. Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
All right. Bye.
Bye.